Happy Friday. Happy Friday. You are listening to the She Heals radio show on Awesome God Radio. It is Friday, June 19th, 2020. It is Juneteenth, y'all. It's Father's Day weekend. I am just super pumped up today. I am your host, Whitney J, and it is an honor and a pleasure to be with you here tonight. If you are tuning in on the Awesome God Radio app, thank you so much. If you have not downloaded the free Awesome God Radio app, you are in for a treat. Download it now. Great shows, great music. There are many things on the horizon with Awesome God Radio. You want to get tapped in. Follow us on all social media platforms as well, Awesome God Radio. If you are tuning in on Facebook Live, thank you so much. Hit the like button, leave me a comment, and share it to your page. I have my other laptop here. I will be checking in on the comments, so please reach out. If you have something to say, I would love to hear it. If you're tuning in on YouTube, same thing. Hit the like button and leave us a comment. Please subscribe to my YouTube page, Whitney Hogan's, as well. So listen, y'all, it's Juneteenth. I am pumped up, as you might be able to tell. I'm excited. I am so thankful to be Black. I'm thankful to be Black, even with all of our hardship, all of the history of us in this country, all the things that we as Black people have had to endure and are continuing to fight through. I would not want to be anything other than myself. I am so proud to be Black. And one of the things that I want to talk about tonight before I get into the She Heals inspiration segment is loving yourself and being proud of your heritage. There is nothing wrong with loving to be Black. And if there is anybody that is making you feel like you loving yourself and acknowledging that you're Black and that you're beautiful is a problem, the problem lies with them and not with you. We are supposed to love ourselves as God loves us. So embrace all of that. Embrace all of your Blackness and be proud to be Black. Be proud of our history, because even though we have endured many things, we have a certain makeup in us that even when things get tough, we pull together and we show out. And listen, God is in control and he loves us. And I know things look crazy right now, but I'm telling you, we got to check our history. We always overcome. We always rise. We always get through. So we should absolutely be proud to be Black, y'all. Okay? I don't want to hear nothing different. But I want to talk about Juneteenth. And so we have an amazing guest that's coming on the second half of the show, Minister Brian Harris. He is a great friend. He is an author, a minister, an educator. He has many, many roles. He is amazing. And we're going to talk about Juneteenth. We're going to talk about Father's Day. But I'm going to give you a little, preview into that conversation, okay? So first thing, we're going to talk about the definition of Juneteenth, but I just want to give you one little tidbit. So we know that Juneteenth represents when we were finally free. Not to be confused with the Emancipation Proclamation. Many people think that is actually when the slaves were free. But guess what? There is a 2.5 year delay between the Emancipation Proclamation and Juneteenth. And so the first thing I want to talk about is delayed freedom. Delayed freedom. Here's the thing. They were already free, technically speaking, right? And there are many theories as to why there was this 2.5 year delay. Many people say, slave owners, they just didn't want to tell them. They didn't want to get that information out. They were trying to get what they can get. We'll hop into that a little bit more in the second segment. But there's a 2.5 year delay from the Emancipation Proclamation to Juneteenth, right? And so how many of us are in delayed freedom? We are waiting to be free, right? Or how many of us have been in a situation where it's like, man, I just want to be free. And we didn't even realize that we were already free. That's a word for somebody. Shoot, that's a word for me. That sometimes we are still in bondage and we're waiting for freedom and we're praying for freedom and we're fasting for freedom. And God's like, but the freedom happened 2.5 years ago. You just didn't know it. How many of you right now are living in bondage? You've already professed that Jesus is your Lord. You're saved. You've already said, God, I'm a sinner. I believe that Jesus died on the cross for my sins. Save me. You're already saved, and yet you're still in bondage. Your freedom has somehow been delayed. I often wonder what was happening with the slaves and our people during that time, that 2.5 years. Was it just business as usual? Were there talks and whispers about you might be free, but maybe we aren't free? I don't know, right? I wonder about, well, what was happening those 2.5 years? That's a lot of time. I imagine that there were people that might have died in that time. I imagine that babies might have been born during that time. I imagine that people that probably never thought they would see freedom, right? They were slaves. Their parents were slaves. Their parents' were slaves. They never thought freedom was possible. And little did they know, 2.5 years later, they would experience it. But some of them didn't. Can you imagine? We talk about the things that we're going through right now, and not to negate any experience because they're all valuable and they're all meaningful. But slavery is just, the inhumane conditions. It is awful. And, I feel like, in history, we have a way of, we romanticize history, right? And we have a way of making the story sound one way. So it's almost like when people talk about Sally Fields and Thomas Jefferson, and they make it seem like, oh, she was his mistress and they were in love. No, she was a slave, a young child that was being raped. But we make it seem like it is some beautiful, that's what the enemy does, right? He takes a situation and he removes the truth from it and he feeds it to you how you want it to look, right? And guess what? You think you're coming out of something, and actually you're going deeper into the bondage. I understand that the truth hurts. I understand that the truth is uncomfortable, but when we allow the enemy to get in and kind of make it seem like it's something that it's not, it doesn't release us, it pulls us further in. It's like the slaves that even after, they were freed, still remained with their masters, because again, it is a mindset. Again, the enemy has a way of making things seem different than they are. He romanticizes that there's no such thing as a good slave master. If you are enslaving people and treating them as less than human, you are not a good slave master. That's an oxymoron. It doesn't make sense. But again, the enemy romanticizes things. I remember reading in the history books as a kid and talking about, the first Thanksgiving and how beautiful this was. And we look at Pocahontas and all these other stories. And do you realize what was actually happening? Do you realize that that's not how that happened? But again, the enemy will romanticize things. How does that look in present day? It's being in that relationship that's abusive. But the enemy because he makes you feel good when things are good, he romanticizes that. And so you live in the fantasy that everything is good. But then when stuff starts happening, then you're like, wow, like I thought I was free, but I'm actually still in bondage. You have to understand that freedom is complicated. Freedom can be difficult, but freedom is available. But you got to know that you're free. And so many of us, we want to be free, right? So we'll say things like, Lord, free me from being depressed. Lord, free me from financial, hardship. Lord, free me from this, free me from that. But we don't even know what freedom is. And a lot of us don't even know our identity outside of bondage. So we're saying, God, free me, God, save me, God, heal me. And God does it. And then we don't even know how to respond because we're not used to this newness, which is freedom. So we end up going back to what enslaved us because we weren't prepared. We have all these ideas right now, right? If you are looking on social media, we're talking about defunding the police. We have so many ideas. People, I can't say everybody, but many people are fed up with how things are going down and they want change and they're not asking you for it. They're demanding it. And so they're saying, hey, defund the police and do this and do that. And here's the thing, there's nothing wrong with those things, but we need to have an understanding of what that looks like. And that's why we have to seek God in all things. Okay, God, well, what does freedom for me look like? What does that look like? If I've been depressed my entire life, what does being free look like? What does being not depressed look like? God, you're going to have to prepare me because it's going to be uncomfortable. I imagine that the slaves that are now free, it was probably uncomfortable for a period or a season because they were so used to what they had been through, right? And so how do we become free? You know, we say it and we even romanticize freedom, right? But there is a cost to freedom. So guess what? If God has delivered you and you're now free from alcohol and drug addiction and maybe whatever else, right? That still means you're going to have to make some changes. It's still going to cost you something because if I'm now free and I don't get high no more, that means I can't go to the places that I used to get high. That means that I can't put myself in that position anymore. That means I may have to change some of my environment. So it requires me to do something, right? It requires me to make a change. If I'm now free because I'm free in Christ, that requires me to shift my environment. That requires me to maybe make some adjustments to who is in my space. It requires something. And many of us want the idea of freedom, but we don't want to do the work that freedom is because we've romanticized the vision of freedom. I'm not saying don't want freedom. I'm saying we got to look at the whole picture. I can only imagine what our ancestors, because they were so much more than slaves, right? They were people, right? I can only imagine them wanting their freedom, and that's all they ever wanted. And then they get it, and it's like, okay, well, now what? It took people to come in. It took God to arise those leaders to come in to now figure out the next steps. So what I'm saying to you is, do you have a team for your freedom? Because you're not going to be able to do it by yourself. You're not going to be able to figure it out by yourself. I'm telling you right now, I'm in a process where I want to be free from some trauma. I have dealt with some traumatic things. I have had things that have really hurt me and broken me, and they have shaped who I am. And I'm tired of being bound by those traumas. So I want to be free from trauma. Well, I recognize that I can't do that in my own strength, because if I could do it in my own strength, I wouldn't be in this situation, right? So I am now seeking assistance. I have a therapist. I have a coach. I have friends and family that keep me accountable. I am looking for assistance with the freedom, because guess what? All I know is how to be me, right? All I know is how to be me, and I know how to be me in this way. So I don't know what life for Whitney, apart from anxiety, looks like yet, because I haven't experienced that yet. When I'm not talking about not being anxious for a moment, I'm talking about being free from anxiety, right? Not being bound by it. I don't know what that looks like yet. So I'm going to need some people to help me walk through that, so that when I'm free, I don't return to what enslaved me, because I was so uncomfortable in my freedom. So all I'm saying is, as we are seeking freedom, let's make sure that we have a strong foundation and what that looks like. We're willing to do the work, and we have the people. Anybody can get on here and say something. Anybody can post something on social media. Listen, I was going back through my, memories on Facebook this morning, and like I post about Juneteenth every year, right? Because I actually live this, and I am proud of my culture. But there are a lot of people that this year, in this moment, is their first exposure to that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I'm saying is, now that you're exposed, don't go back to being ignorant. Now that you are being intentional about learning about your history and learning about the cost to freedom, don't then go back when things settle down, right? When the social media presence of these particular issues goes away and we shift into another direction, we start thinking about and talking about something else. Don't let the knowledge that you've received, the freedom that you've received, go away and go back to the way of being ignorant now that you know. Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better. So now that we know, and some of us have this new sense of self-love and pride in our culture, some of us that maybe are not Black and African American have a new appreciation for the history of our people. Whatever it is, what I'm saying is, don't let the moment pass you. Don't let freedom be a fleeting movement. Let it be a permanent residence in your heart. Let freedom be permanent in your heart, and then let it trickle down into your children and your family and your bloodline and your heritage. It's so much bigger than that. I grew up, here in Howard County, Maryland, and my dad, when I was a kid, put me in BSAP through Howard County Public Schools. BSAP, Black Student Achievement Program. And we, back in that time, we had a summer program, and we would go to HCC, Howard Community College, and we would be there during the summer. And it was all Black kids, all Black teachers, and we had all of these, different classes. So we took all of these classes, and then every week we went on a field trip. I learned so much about my history during that time. And this was like 20 some years ago. I was in middle school all the way through high school, and I learned so much. And every day there were poems that we had to recite. We had to recite all of the days of Kwanzaa. There was this poem that was about determination. It's like, whatever I want to be, I'll be. I can probably still quote it because it was ingrained in us that our Black is beautiful, that we are not second to no one. And like, I learned how to love me as a Black woman. Listen, I'm Black before anything else, and that is okay. Right? And so I learned that, and it was in me, and that pride of being Black has never left me. So what I'm saying to you is, what is poured in you will remain in you. So if you start affirming yourself and speaking life over yourself and saying, you know what, I'm not second to anybody. My God made me. If you start doing that, it'll start to sink in. It's funny how I learned and to love being a Black woman before I learned to love Whitney just as me. I'm 33 years old. I'm still working on loving me and saying Whitney is beautiful and Whitney is smart and Whitney is enough. But me being a Black woman, I can say that all day. It's amazing how the mind can departmentalize things. But again, we're constantly moving and shaking. And listen, we have got to pour it in, and we have to stop expecting other people to affirm us and expecting other people to provide the information. One of the things that I love, my grandmother, my late grandmother, Edna Lyles used to say, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And what that meant was, if you have already shown me who you are the first time, I need to be mindful of that before I have another encounter with you. So we know the history of this country. Okay, we know how this goes. We went from slavery, we moved into Jim Crow, civil rights. Then it was, the just going straight to jail. Then it's, the prison or from the pipeline from school to prison. There's a million ways that they have tried to oppress us. We know that. So we have to stop waiting for them to somehow just get it. And we have to start affirming ourselves. Okay, we teach people how to treat us. Right? So we have to start affirming ourselves and saying, listen, I'm not taking this anymore. I'm not doing this anymore. We are a blessed people. I know my rights. I vote because people died for me to have the option of whether I want to vote or not. I take my Blackness serious. We have to really look at freedom because it came with a cost. Our freedom in Christ came with the cost of the cross, right? So Jesus died on the cross so that we didn't have to, right? Our freedom came with a cost. The freedom of us as Black people in this country came at a cost. It came at the cost of people dying, giving their life to fight for us. Again, this country loves to romanticize things. Oh my gosh, we love Dr. King, right? Everybody loves Dr. King. Did we forget that they murdered him? They assassinated him? Dr. King didn't die of old age. He was murdered. He was assassinated. But they loved him, right? We use Dr. King quotes all the time, right? There's a Martin Luther King Boulevard in every city. Yes, he was socially acceptable to the greater good, but they still assassinated him. So this is why I'm saying to you, the enemy is swift and he is sly and he is quick, and you got to be focused. We don't need nobody to affirm us. We are called by God. We don't need anybody to tell us that we are great. We need to know that we're great. And we need to fight towards our freedom, and not just our freedom, but the freedom of everybody in bondage. And then on top of that, we have to understand that freedom comes with a cost, and we have to be willing to pay. We have to be willing to pay. And that's going to require us to shift. I know right now there are so many things that are uncomfortable. I think my cousin or somebody sent me this list of restaurants that support Trump, right? I was just like, wow, like some of these are restaurants I really, really like, right? But there's going to come a time where you're going to have to make some tough calls, right? So as much as I, love certain things, I may have to shift, and I may have to go in a different direction because I'm working towards my freedom, and I know that my freedom is going to cost me. It's going to cost me a mindset change. It's going to cost me to reevaluate some things and some practices in my life. Am I doing right by me? Am I doing right by my people? My freedom is going to cost. And so if I really am pursuing that freedom, I'm going to have to recognize that things are going to get a little uncomfortable. It's going to require me to have some courageous conversations. It's going to require me to speak up in times that I may want to shut down, and a lot of us are tired, right? I was sharing with someone earlier this week, like, you know what? I'm tired of explaining why killing us is wrong. Like, I'm protecting my energy now at all costs. I'm only having conversations that are meaningful, conversations that are uplifting, conversations of people that really want to know and do better. But I'm not having a conversation with you to tell you that killing my people in the manner that we are watching on video over and over is wrong, because I shouldn't have to do that. But now I'm shifting my thought and saying, God, what conversations are for you? What do you need me to say? I know what I don't want to say. I know what I don't want to do. But God, what is my role in this situation? Because I'm living in it, and I'm in it, and I want to see the change. So I can't be looking for our president to fix it. I can't be looking for my neighbor to fix it. I've got to identify what is my role in this quest and journey to freedom, because everybody plays a part. And no part is greater than the other. So you need to identify in this season, what is your part in your journey to freedom? Whatever it is that you are looking to be free from, you need to identify what is your role. Because many of us just want God to just do something. Many means me. Sometimes I don't want to have to work for it. Sometimes I'm just like, God, I just want you to make the way. I just want you to change the hearts of people. I just want that to happen. I just want to not see us getting killed on video and people justifying it. Like, God, you're all powerful. Can't you just fix it? But what he's saying is that in this process to freedom, he's going to reveal himself in new ways. This is an opportunity for people to come to him. This is an opportunity for change to take place, not just for this moment and these specific events, but for a lifelong generational change. And it's just not that simple. God could have just healed people. You know what I mean? He could have just said, okay, you're forgiven from your sins, but he required Jesus to come down here on earth, to live as a human apart from sin, and to endure the cross. There was some process. So we've got to stop just thinking things are just going to change. We need to seek God on what is our process. God, where am I in this whole thing? Okay, yeah, I'm seeing what's going on. And yes, we should have people doing better. We should have people that have been doing better. But God, instead of me focusing all my attention on everywhere else and everybody else, what are you saying for Whitney to do? Where is my voice in this, God? What actions and steps can I be taking? And give me the strength, God, that when it gets uncomfortable, I still stick with it. Because the journey to freedom is greater than my need to be comfortable. Are you willing to get uncomfortable to get free? I don't want to deal with delayed freedom. I don't want to deal with actually being free and not even knowing you're free until 2.5 years later. Think of all the slaves that died within that time, that never got to experience said freedom. We're doing that right now. Look at how many people die daily that don't get to live and experience freedom, because they had the opportunity to be free all along and they didn't know. Or because the freedom was uncomfortable, so they reverted back to what kept them in bondage. because they didn't know that God was there all along. Listen, I'm not trying to make this I'm not going to romanticize this. I'm not trying to make it sound good. But what I am trying to tell you is there is freedom in God, but it does have to cost you something. And we have got to get ready to pay the cost. I have choice, right? I can choose whether to vote or not. And yes, I still experience racism. Yes, everything is not perfect for me, right? But I get to choose where I want to live. I have some options. I was able and blessed to be able to go to school. I've had some options. Those options did not come free. That was because people that came before me sacrificed and gave their life for me to have a choice. Do you understand? Freedom costs. So if you are seeking freedom, it is available, but you have got to be willing to pay the cost. Listen, my people, my Black people, my non-Black people, everybody in the body of Christ, everybody, everywhere, period. Freedom is available to all of us. We just got to do the work. So listen, that was a lot. And we are going to be, our guest is coming on in a few minutes. I do want to share one thing as we transition to the second half of the show, though. So the focus and the forefront of this show is Juneteenth. It's Father's Day weekend. We're going to be talking about that too. Y'all probably not going to like what I have to say about that, but you'll be okay. But it is about affirming our Black people and affirming our Black men and our Black women, our Black children. And listen, it is not at any disadvantage to anybody else. And I think that we have to cancel the narrative that when I say this is for Black people, that it's because we hate other people. That's not true. Like I said earlier in the show, if me loving me is a problem for you, you're the problem, not me. There's nothing wrong with me loving myself. There's nothing wrong with me being proud to be Black. There's nothing wrong with that. If that is a problem, that's a problem for you, and you can handle that on your own. It's not a me problem. Black people, let's take our pride back in who we are. We don't got to shrink back for anybody. We don't have to, tone it down, for anybody. We've got to rise up and be who God called us to be. He made us like this on purpose, and we are the apple of his eye. We do not have to shrink back. We don't have to make it comfortable for other people. We have got to be in position and do what God called us to do. And guess what? That's going to come with some supporters, and it's going to come with some haters. And you know what? It's going to be okay either way. So let's get in position. Let's get free. No more delayed freedom. No more living in bondage unnecessarily. No more, flirting with the idea of freedom, but not living in the reality of freedom. No more, we're kind of on the skirts of it, like, oh yeah, this is cool. I feel good, but I'm a shift here because this is still comfortable. That bondage is still comfortable. No, let's get free because we have kids that are dependent on our freedom. We have generations that are going to come after us that need us to be in position and doing what we need to do so that they can have a better life. I think of all the people, just even in my own family, that didn't get to live to see the first Black president. They didn't get to see Barack Obama. My children, all they know is Barack Obama, right? All they know, they live in a world where having a Black president was completely possible. It was the norm for my kids. For me, it was pride to be able to vote for our first Black president. It's something I honestly never thought I would see. I can only imagine for my parents and grandparents and great-grandparents how they would respond. We owe it to the generations after us to get in position and to do what God called us to do, to be who God called us to be, and to get free. Y'all ready? Let's get free. We are getting ready to have a super amazing guest. He is getting ready to hop in momentarily. I just want to share a little bit about him. The power of social media. We met via social media, and he has been a guest on the She Heals radio show before. His name is Brian Harris, Minister Brian Harris. He's an author, a minister, an educator. He's a phenomenal man of God. And I am so excited that he's going to be joining us very shortly just to keep this conversation going. Up, I think he's in now. Hey,
Hey, Whitney,
Brian.
how are you, sis?
How are you?
Doing great. Happy Juneteenth to you.
Happy Juneteenth to you. I love you. I am so glad that
I
you are
love you too.
here. So
I
I
am
don't know
too.
if
I
you were
am too.
tuning into the first half of the show, but
I
I,
was.
you know
I
how we
was.
get when we start talking. So I was like
Right.
extra fired up today. But I want
Yes.
to piggyback a little bit, and I want to just go back to Juneteenth. First, I want you to share who you are for those that may not know you, but then I want us to hop right into our Juneteenth discussion.
Sure. So, good evening, everybody. Happy Juneteenth to all of our Black kings and queens out
Yeah.
there. I am Brian Keith Harris II. Like Sister Whitney said, author of Freedom's Design 20 Days of Empowering Black Kings, and have a new book that is coming out and releasing in August entitled I Am My History, which is a children's book that celebrates Black history and culture. I am an educator. I think today marks my 16th year in education.
Yeah.
I'm a school administrator, school administrator at the Bishop Walker School for Boys in Washington, D.C., and minister and just an advocate for Black and Brown children, and more importantly, an advocate for Black and Brown boys.
Yes, yes. And we need you. We thank you for your work. I know it's not easy. I know it's not
Right,
easy,
right.
but I
But it's
think
necessary.
but it's necessary, right? And like I said
Right.
earlier, freedom comes with a cost. So we got to
That's
get
right.
to work. So let's hop in and talk about Juneteenth. So if somebody that has never heard of Juneteenth, and a lot of people, this is their first time, right? We were talking about, I
Yeah.
was talking about that earlier. A lot of people are learning about Juneteenth for the first time this year. Can you just give a
Good.
quick synopsis of what Juneteenth is?
Yeah, and so I think the majority of people in our country have heard of the Emancipation Proclamation,
Yes.
right? The act that set our enslaved African ancestors free. What we do not know is all of the history that occurred from the time of emancipation into the time that the 13th Amendment was abolished, giving slaves the opportunity, or the enslaved an opportunity, to actually be free by law. And so on January 1st, 1863,
Mhm.
the Emancipation Proclamation was read to enslaved Africans all around this country. However, on June 19th, 1865, 2.5 years later, the enslaved Africans who were in Galveston, Texas, were told that they were free 2.5 years later.
Yeah.
And so they were living, breathing, and under the law and harshness of enslavement, yet they were free, which is truly a word in and of itself. But our people were told that they were free, and many people, researchers and historians, talk about the road to making sure that those enslaved Africans in Texas knew that they were free. And so there's a lot of speculation as to, how come the word didn't get to them. But what happened is that the U.S. Sent troops in to all of the plantations in Galveston, Texas, and all throughout that area in Texas, and forcing those slave owners and slave masters to allow those enslaved Africans to walk in their freedom.
Mhm.
And then on December 6th, 1865, in that same year, a little later on, that's when the 13th Amendment was officially ratified or abolished, allowing freedom to be a reality for those enslaved Africans by law. But as many of us know today, that freedom ain't always free,
Okay.
and there's a lot of T-shirts walking around that are actually reality, which is the term of free-ish. We are free
Right.
ish, So
Right.
so yeah, so that's pretty much the history of Juneteenth. There's so much more to it, but I think ultimately, for those who have never heard of Juneteenth, the simple thing that we can share with them is that many people in this country celebrate July 4th as being the independence of this country.
Absolutely.
However, during that time, July 4th, 1776, enslaved Africans who were here in this country, who are our ancestors, they were not a part of that independence. And so, what the fourth is to all of those Americans, so is June 19th to all Black Americans
That's
in
right.
this country. And the reality is that when many people in Texas, Juneteenth is a big deal in Texas, and so people in Texas actually celebrate Juneteenth, and it's a
Mhm.
reality. And I heard on the show earlier you were saying, I posted something every year, right, about
Yeah.
Juneteenth, and and that's a true statement. In this year, it seems that the ideas and the ideologies and Juneteenth has become bigger. And I think that what has happened is that our country is forced to be at a greater level of awareness about the harshness of being Black in this country,
Right.
aware of the inequity and the inequality that exists among Black Americans in this country. And in a real sense, also the things that Black people hold dear, which is our freedom in a variety of ways. And so
Absolutely.
I feel like that's why, in a real sense, we're celebrating Juneteenth. It's so special in this year because all of the hell that we have been through in this year,
Right.
and in many other years, but centralizing and focusing on this year.
Absolutely. I could not have said it better myself. It is definitely an awareness that is taking place. And, truth be told, I don't care if it took you this long to get aware. Now that you
Right.
are, let's go. Right.
What you gonna do? Right. That's it.
Exactly. And so I think that, we talk about, the freedom of our ancestors, but we also know that free-ish also applied back then as well, right? Because
That's right.
there
That's
were
right.
other things that were put in place to maybe give us the illusion that we were free, but the
Right.
reality is that we were still enslaved to some degree. And if we
Absolutely.
fast forward to now, that still is prevalent. That is still
Absolutely.
the same. And I was sharing
Absolutely.
before about we romanticize a lot of things and we make it seem like it was something so nice and so beautiful, and it wasn't, and it's still not.
Right.
And I think
And
that people
yeah,
are
yeah.
tired.
They're tired. And that's also, I mean, we see the idea of our enslaved African ancestors being free in 1863 and then again in 1865.
Right.
And we, in a real sense, yes, we sometimes romanticize it. The reality is that that's really when the hell began even more for them, right? Because
Exactly.
not only were they free, but they were still living under the systematic oppression and racism and the complete and very explicit thought and ideology that Black people in this country were inferior, especially from those who wanted to continue with slavery. And so,
Right.
in a real sense, our people were always in a space of being free ish. Not only were we free ish because of the fact that we did not accumulate economic wealth at all, even the ideology of 40 acres and a mule, for many of us, we look at that as, oh, this was an opportunity for us to come up. Yeah, but if you really think about what 40 acres and one mule can do, then you'll realize how less and how much of an insult that actually was, right?
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
also during those times, our people, had to deal with black codes, and black codes were much like, black codes of the late 1800s, early 1900s is, the Jim Crow of the civil rights movement. And so we were always in some sort of way still under the thumb, and still were and currently are under the thumb of systematic racism and inequality in this country. So I think like Juneteenth is a time not just for us to celebrate freedom, but for us to really think about how it is that we as a people can continue to live and move in freedom in a way that it will create lasting change for future generations. And so, one of the ways for us to do that, Whitney, is not just through our protesting, right? Protesting is essential, right? The things that our brothers and sisters are doing around this country are phenomenal, and they are essential. They are essential to continue to break down and dismantle, systematic racism and oppression that exists in our judicial system, in our penal system, in our education system, in
Yeah.
every system that is in this country. But that's not all that we have the power to do. We also have the power to make a difference in the way in which we use our money and the financial resources that we
Yes.
have in this country.
Yes.
You know, So when we talk about Juneteenth, it's a way for us to think about multiple things. How can we, how can I, as, a Black man, as a Black woman, as a Black girl or boy, how can I begin to become an entrepreneur in a way that it's not just helping me and my family, but in a way that it also can lasting.
I can't hear you. I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Create lasting, how can we create lasting change in our community? And so again, Juneteenth is an opportunity for us to celebrate the freedom of our people, but it's also an opportunity for us to think about the ways in which we can create more freedom for ourselves, which is through, economic freedom. So I heard you talking about like, shopping Black and buying Black. It's not just a cool thing to do. It's an essential thing to do, because we, in a real sense, that's the way that we can really pull ourselves out of, some of the systems that continue to seek control over us. I think I was reading, our people, African American people spend trillions of dollars, building into the economy every year, yet we hold such a small percentage of holding and owning businesses. And so it's important that we understand the ideas of celebrating freedom. We understand that, protesting, marching for our rights is something that is essential for our freedom, but us also making a difference in the way in which we function through the world financially, and economically is also contributing to our freedom. So those are the things that we can only focus on during this time. So you buying Black is not something that was okay for you to do today. It's not okay for something for you to do tomorrow or next week or even until, July 4th. It's something that should be a general practice of yours, because you want to sow into and invest into our community in such a powerful way. Such a powerful way. So if that means you gotta change out some of your hair products, change your hair products out. If that means that you gotta take an extra drive to a coffee shop that's not a Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, take the extra drive, right? This is us pouring back into our community, investing in our community, and investing in our people. And that is the way that we continue to make a stance, and we continue to pull ourselves out of, the racial hellhole that we're currently in.
Absolutely. And again, like I said, freedom is going to cost us, right? It's going to cost us something. There is some sacrifice involved, but we can do this, and we owe it to those that have went before us and died and suffered with us in mind. We owe it also to the people that we don't even know yet, the generations that we will never even see, but that need us to do what we need to do so that they can do what they need to do. So it is imperative. With that being said, I'm going to slightly pivot the conversation. I think one of the biggest things that is done to tear us down as a people is the societal depiction of the Black man. Mm-hmm. So we have a preconceived, and when I say we, I say that lightly, but it has been ingrained in us, right?
That's right.
That Black men are problematic. Right? They are aggressive. They're violent. They are not good fathers. They're not present. They're not responsible. Right? We have this notion that has been ingrained in us, and being transparent, some of us may have experienced some of them that as well. Right? And so now that we are in this space, we are transitioning. Father's Day is also this weekend. So what an interesting weekend, right? Juneteenth and Father's Day. And, I woke up this morning and I was thinking about George Floyd.
Yeah.
He was a father. And I was thinking about his daughter. And, that this will be the first Father's Day that she doesn't have her father. I was thinking about a cousin. I have a cousin who passed away on Christmas Day, and today actually is his birthday. And I'm thinking about his daughter, who is not going to have her dad on Father's Day. I'm thinking about his father that is going to not have his son on Father's Day. And my heart was heavy. And one of the things that it made me think about is specifically to our Black men, our Black fathers,
Yeah.
there is this notion that they don't exist.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
So I think we have to, it's layers on layers on layers on
That
layers. I'm gonna
is.
just try to drag. I'm gonna try to back up just a little bit because I think that before we start addressing the stereotypes and the stigmas that are placed on Black men, Black fathers, Black boys,
Mhm.
I think it's important for us to understand how the effects of systematic oppression, racism, and enslavement, how much that is still ingrained in our culture,
Yes.
in our behaviors, and
Yes.
in a real sense, in the way in which we think even about ourselves.
Yes.
And so, one of the ways in which this is filtered through Black fatherhood is in this way. During the time of enslavement, I'm gonna go two places. Um, during the time of enslavement, as our enslaved African ancestors, and I want to back up quickly. When I talk about slavery, I always talk in terms of enslavement, and I do not ever call our people slaves,
Mm.
right?
Thank
I
you for
always talk about them being enslaved. They're not slaves, they were enslaved people. They didn't voluntarily sign up to be slaves. They did not owe a particular debt in order for them to, become slaves. And so they were enslaved people.
hmm
So, um, um, during the time that our people were put onto boats, we know that the first, shipment of our enslaved African ancestors came in 1619 in Jamestown, Virginia, from, the Ivory Coast, more specifically Ghana. We recognize that during that time, in order to break the strength of our men, in order to have their mothers and their wives and their children to begin looking at them as being weak people.
Mm.
Those who enslaved them did all kinds of things to fear them and to, in a real sense, condition them.
Right.
Everything from raping their wives in front of them to
Yeah.
emasculating them, a variety of things were done to break the soul and the spirit of our fathers and our men.
Mm.
Coming to this country, we then were made in a real sense to become studs. And if you guys don't know what a stud is, you need to pick up a book called Brainwashed by Tom Burrell. He talks about that in his book. But studs during the enslavement time were those our ancestors who were made to sleep with the other women who were enslaved, all in an effort not to father them, to be fathers, but literally just to populate, if you will,
Yes.
right? So, this ideology of fatherhood being something, one, where we're not able to provide for our families, or when we don't understand the strength and the power of providing for our families, is not something that we, in my opinion, are doing always voluntarily. Now, obviously, there are some outliers, but
Right.
ultimately, some of our behaviors are behaviors that stem directly from enslavement. And
Yeah.
so, and so, in a real sense, the soul of our Black men has been broken, and the ideas of brainwash or the propaganda that was given to us was you are inferior, you're less than, and as a result, you'll always be this way. And
Mm.
so that's some of our own ideology, that we're inferior, that we're less than, and that all we're good for is making babies, because that's what we were made to do during the time of enslavement, making babies and then not taking care of them. And so it's important to share this context so that we understand that Black men and Black fathers, some of the deficits that we're experiencing within ourselves are directly linked to things that we didn't create ourselves,
Yes.
right? There
Yeah.
are conditions that we were pushed to be in, and as a result, we're living out those conditions. So, my thing to all of our fathers is that when you recognize that, then you absolutely change the way in which you behave, or
Yeah.
lest you will be a main contributor in, racism and systematic oppression.
Yeah.
I've said this term multiple times. and this term was taught to me while I was in seminary, but disassociative dualism, when the oppressed become the oppressor. And so we have to first understand the context of why our behaviors are what they are in
Right.
order for us to heal from those behaviors and then understand what those behaviors should be. So when we think about what those behaviors should be, then we look at the relationship of family, what family means in West African countries, right? We look at how the Black father in West African countries are idolized and revered and loved. We think about the ancient griots of West Africa, the storytellers, and how those people, those men were celebrated. And we see these ideas of fatherhood, those who take care of the community, those who love the community, those who are examples and shining stars, those who are nurturing and loving individuals. When
Yeah.
we see those examples have a way of empowering us so that we can change our behaviors. And
Yeah.
so, to all of the stereotypes, to all of the stigmas, we have to understand that the more that we behave um, in a way that pulls us away from family, the more that we're perpetuating this idea of being brainwashed, right?
Yeah.
The more we pull away from family, the more we're contributing to what the general population of society really believes and thinks about Black America, about Black men. And so
Yeah.
the ways for us to empower ourselves is one, to get to gain a level of awareness about why the behaviors exist, and then to work on our own mental and emotional health,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Many of our fathers are not showing up for their kids, not because they don't want to,
Right.
right? That we have to stop understanding. Some of them are not showing up for their kids because they don't have the mental and emotional capabilities of doing so. And all they need is somebody to help them heal from that so that they can show up for their
Right.
families, right? All
Right.
they need is for someone to say, hey, brother, this is not the way to go. This is actually the way to go, right? But we
Right.
also then need, and this may get me in a little bit of trouble, but we also need our young mothers, or not young mothers, but our mothers, to also understand the behaviors as well,
Yes.
right? Because ultimately what happens is that we sometimes do a lot of damage to Black men and Black fathers, right? Not
Yes.
just to their egos, but just to them individually. So when we all become engaged and aware of our behaviors and how our behaviors are informed by enslavement, we then can change those behaviors, we then can heal, and then we can restore our family. And when we restore our families, then we will be able to mend the soul of Black people. Because at the core of who we are, our soul is our history, our culture, our traditions, our family values. So when we understand the context of why we are behaving in this way, where we don't, where we're not acting out the ideologies of our African ancestors who believe that family is essential, right? Once we gain
Yes.
an awareness about that, once we're able to heal from that, then what ends up happening is that we are now able to show up for our families in the way in which we were created to do.
Yes. First of all, that was a whole word.
Amen. I say.
That was,
Amen.
I
I
mean,
say.
yes. And it is so much deeper. And that was what I was trying to get to. And you went right there. It is so much
Yeah.
deeper than what we see, right?
Right.
And it's so much deeper than even just our own experience, whatever that looks like, right? It is
Right.
so much bigger than that. And I think that, like you said, there's work. Again, there's work for that freedom. We've got to identify it. We've got to heal from it. We've got to be coachable and trainable, right? We got to be
That's
teachable so
right.
that we can do something different. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different
Different thing.
results,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
we've got to be willing to do that. And I mean, man, that was just powerful. And one of the things I was thinking about this today, and I was like, I know it's gonna get me in trouble, but I don't care. It's my show.
It's fine.
Is,
Go for it.
every year, everyone that knows me, knows that I am a widow and that I'm a single
Right.
mom. And yes,
Right.
I go hard for my children. Anybody that
Yeah.
knows me personally knows I am all about Quincy and Kevin. And
You
so
are.
many people reach out to me on Father's Day and they say, Happy Father's Day because you're a mom, that you're a single mom, you do both roles, blah, blah, blah. And I always say, that's sweet, but I have my day. I'm actually not a father. And it is impossible for me to play both roles when I'm only designed for one. And so I feel like, and that's, it's a big, and again, it goes back to what you just said, right? It's a deeper issue, but it's being able to recognize that Father's Day is a man-made holiday, right? It has no substance in the Word of God, right? But anyway, we celebrate it. But to say that I play both roles is dismissing the role of a father.
Mm-hmm.
You can happen. I can see it. You're like,
So multiple things. The first thing, not only is it dismissing the role of the father, but it's perpetuating the idea that the
yes,
father is not present. The way that you empower a father to be more a part of his family is not by saying he's not here, so I'm going to celebrate myself as being the father, or I'm going to embrace and receive everyone who tells me Happy Father's Day. That's not the way to empower fathers to be more of the
yeah,
example that you desire for them to be, or that they're called to be. The
right,
way for us to empower fathers is by letting them know you are a father, and whether it's a holiday or not, you have a responsibility to your family. And
yeah,
so what we should be doing in those moments is when someone tells a mom Happy Father's Day, that's the mom's cue to work even harder, to work through her own issues with the father and understand the most important thing is not necessarily my relationship with him. The most important thing is his relationship with my child. So
yeah,
maybe I need to work a little bit harder. Now, that is not to say that there are some fathers who, in a real sense, do not have the ability or capabilities, right,
right,
to be in the presence of their child, right, for a lot of different reasons,
right.
right. I have a very, very close friend, and won't share all of the details, but she had a situation where her children just could not. It was not a safe situation for
Right.
them to be around their father. But one thing that I love that she did, she never ever talked negatively about him.
Yeah.
She always praised him, even in the eyes of the children, so that the children, in some sort of way, still revered, still celebrated their father. And then she began to share with them some of the truths about their father. And then what they did was they began to have grace
Mm.
for their own father. And so what happens is that when we take the father out of the picture totally, just by way of a holiday or a celebration that I'm gonna get to in a second, but when we talk about taking the father out altogether, we're just perpetuating the idea that family is not essential. And our ideology of family not being essential is not intrinsically an African or African centered ideology. That's
Yeah.
not that is the hallmark of African culture is family. So
Yeah.
when we perpetuate that, we're actually once again falling into the hands of the ultimate oppressor, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but not only that, I think the greatest thing is, and I haven't done this research on this, who made up Father and Mother's Day? Who
I
made those days up? Right? And not only who made those days up, and that's not me saying don't celebrate, because we're gonna be celebrating my father this weekend,
yeah.
Ashe.
When my
But
daddy out.
right, but what I am saying is that we have to even think about who even created this holiday, right? Did
Mm-hmm.
this holiday is this inclusive of Black people? Because in a real sense, Black people's Father's Day and Mother's Day is every day, because family is already essential and important. So we should be celebrating our fathers and mothers every single day. So
Yes.
again, my response to those people who call moms and say Happy Mother's Day, just please stop, right? Like, just
Yeah.
stop that. And if you can't say anything kind about that father to that father, then don't say anything at all. But by all means, do not take that concept that you're the only person working, even if you are, and place that on your children, because they still
Right.
deserve to see their father as an example. And then as they get older and as they are able to make their own decisions and they're able to see the decisions of their father, allow them to form in a real sense how they're going to look at their father. But until then, don't allow your stuff to be put on them that will cause Black fathers and Black men to be looked at in a negative light. Even if, for example, during Christmas when we were children,
Right.
I know some Black people and some people gonna say, I never. We told our kids about Santa Claus. You did. Let's just tell the truth. And then even for those who said that, even for those who didn't, your children still got gifts. In a real sense, you created an experience for your child. They gave your child something to look forward to. That made your child feel good.
Right.
So when we celebrate the father in that child's life, that makes the child feel good because that's a person that's connected to them. So
I can't hear you. It'll come back in just a second.
Did it come back?
Yeah, it's here. It's here.
All right. So we don't want to take away that good feeling by disrespecting or dismissing our fathers. That's it.
Yes. And even to just throw a quick biblical perspective, the word of God tells us to honor our mother and father. It doesn't say honor our perfect mother or our perfect father. It doesn't say honor our present mother or our present father. It says honor our mother and father. And so we have a mandate
that your days might be longer on earth.
Yes. So we gotta honor and we gotta heal. Listen, we are overtime, but man, that was a conversation I needed. That was wonderful. Quickly, as we wrap up the show, I pray that you were as blessed as I was, because I am feeling full. I feel educated. I feel empowered. It is time for us to take our families back, to take our lives back, and to get free. It is time. Brian, I want you to share really quickly where people can get in contact with you and get your book. And I know that you have a book that is coming out in August. Just share your contact information really quick as we wrap up.
Sure, very quickly. Website, www.briankeithharris.com. And on all forms of social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Brian Keith Harris. Very simple.
Awesome. And I will put it in the comments. Please reach out. He's an incredible author, speaker. He has many things to offer. I couldn't even explain it all, but reach out to him, support him, lock in with him, have him come to your next event, whatever. I'm telling you, your life will be changed. Brian, it is always a pleasure talking to you. I am so thankful.
Always a pleasure, Whitney. Thank you so much for the platform. Thank you.
Oh, anytime. To my producer, Q, I love you so much. Thank you for always keeping our show tight. To my Awesome God Radio.
Shout out to Q.
Yes. I love you all. To everybody listening and tuning in, I love you all. I'm so honored that you come and hang with me every Friday. Happy Juneteenth. Happy Father's Day to every father. I pray that it's a wonderful day on Sunday. Special shout out to my daddy, Floyd Lyles, Quincy's father, CJ, Clarence Nutter, and to my late husband, Stephen Hogan's, who was a great father. Shout out to you as well. We love you. In closing, she thinks, she feels, she prays, she cries, she strengthens, she fasts, she overcomes, and ultimately she heals. This is the She Heals Radio Show with your host, Whitney J. Have an amazing weekend. Take care. We will see you back here next Friday. God bless.
God bless you.